So yeah, teaching in a socially distanced classroom. So I'm based in Brighton in the UK and working for a couple of schools and going through all the COVID changes, we've had to adapt accordingly. So I'm just giving you a little bit of advice in case you want it and an opportunity to share your experiences as well. So in this session, we're going to talk about what we believe our main professional challenges have been so far and how we can develop a more positive outlook on what we have to do to move forward. We want to provide lessons that we and our students are satisfied with, and satisfaction is the key word here. So initially, we were confronted with lots of limitations to our usual teaching practices. What I'd like to do is acknowledge our perceived limitations and try to transform these negative concerns into much more positive opportunities to adapt and to broaden our skills as teachers and as people. Specifically, our skills in classroom management during COVID and our skills in using technology. So let's talk about the aims of this session. Okay, my aims for this presentation are, I would like you to know how to teach satisfying lessons in a socially distanced classroom or school. So here we have the word satisfying. In this session, we'll explore from a perspective of pedagogical psychology, because psychological considerations are incredibly important in our field, and they help us to be more effective teachers. I also want you to feel that your teaching situations are considered and that you can work productively and with minimum stress in a socially distanced setting. You will have plenty of opportunity in this session to share your thoughts, ideas, and experiences. I would like us to share and to learn strategies within this session to build confidence within the global ELT teaching community. I will be giving you some practical tips on classroom management and online integration, but I'll also be asking for your contributions so we can get as much practical help from this session as possible. So let's start off. Please share with us your own teaching situation. There are bound to be many variables that differ from my experience. So take this opportunity to tell us now in the chat box, what is your teaching situation? Tell us if you're working online or in school. Tell us if you are teaching in person and online at the same time. Do you have access to the technology required to teach online? And what kind of training is provided for you? So I'm just going to monitor the chat box for a bit and see what you've got to say. There are so many of you. This is really difficult to keep up. Hello. Okay, teaching online, online, only online. Hybrid, yeah, lots of hybrid teaching. Online, 100%. Face-to-face only. Both in school and online. I would love to say your names, but it's running through so fast, it's impossible to catch them. Lots of, yeah, loads of just online, loads of mixed and hybrid. Quite a few people saying they had absolutely no training. Yeah, it's been a fast track learning curve for sure. I'm lucky I'm working in the school. Oh, I'm glad to hear it. I'm jealous. Yeah, you had webinars and school training. Excellent. That's great to hear. Teaching online, no training. Oh, it's so fast. Okay, so we've got I'm working online, self-taught. Yeah. Hybrid and online. It's frustrating. It is so frustrating. Apps, websites, in person. All right, I'm gonna come away from the chat now for a moment. Thank you for your feedback. It's really interesting to know what's going on all around the world. All right, so let's move on to our learning outcomes for this session. Okay, so our key learning outcomes for this session is to gain a clearer understanding of the psychological perspective on what makes a lesson satisfying for both the teacher and the students. So before we take a poll, again in the chat box, please contribute your expertise and let us know exactly what it is that you find satisfying about teaching. Please type your answers in the chat box as soon as you have any ideas. What makes teaching satisfying? What makes you come away from a lesson thinking, that went well? That was a satisfying lesson for me and for the students. So I'm going to monitor your feedback now. Okay, we're still going through thousands of people. Let's switch to what makes your lesson satisfying. Communication, seeing the students. Oh, so we're not looking at the poll yet. I just want your opinions. You don't need to choose an option when you feel you've made a difference. Seeing them face to face. So fast. I wish I could read it properly, but you'll get a copy of all this chat so you can see what everybody's saying. Helping others, knowing that I'm making a difference. Sparkle in the students' eyes and laughter in the classroom. Lovely. Student enjoying learning. That's it. Totally. That's the magic. Bilingual kids can express themselves. Wonderful. Variety of useful tasks. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, we'll just do the poll now if that's okay. So poll time. What makes it satisfying? Choosing between 1, 2, or 3 this time. I'm just going to keep an eye on the poll. You can start polling now. Where's the poll? Here we are. Okay. There goes. I can't see what's happening with the outcome of the poll at the moment. So I'm just going to hazard a guess.
Click on the tab of poll and then open polls, and then you'll see the results. But like 84% people are for the third option, C.
Oh, really? Okay, lovely. Thanks so much for your help. Okay, so the third option, C, when the students felt good and communication flowed easily. Wonderful, absolutely. And this is what the big challenge is when we're doing our online teaching. It's really, really hard to get that magic. But this session is mainly about social distanced classrooms. And so you could be face-to-face, you could have hybrid classrooms, but there are certain things that we can't do in a socially distanced classroom, and that's what we're going to explore now. Okay, wonderful. Let's just close this poll page so I can see what we're doing. Great. Okay. So the second key learning outcome for this session is more practical. So we're going to move on, after we've looked at the psychological perspectives, to some practical guidance for a satisfying and a stress-free distanced classroom, if possible. So as teachers, we understand the importance of achieving and maintaining a stress-free environment in our classrooms to promote positive associations with learning. In the poll, which we're not doing yet, there are just 3 options. But before we take the poll, again, let's share in the chat box an example, this time, an example of something that is likely to induce stress in the classroom. What do you do to prevent it or combat it? So just your opinions in the chat box. What causes stress in your classrooms? How do you prevent it? And I'll try to catch some of your answers. What makes the classroom stressful? How do you avoid it? Still got people saying all the lovely things. Let's scroll down to the bottom. Connection problems, okay. Put in your own ideas. Poor internet connection, new student of a different level, absolutely. Differentiation of levels in the classroom, always difficult. Students who are not engaged, absolutely. When technology fails, I immediately send emails to students explaining what they should do for the next class. Yeah, very good, but loads more work, isn't it? Very young learners, must be difficult. No experience there, I'm afraid, but well done you. Sybil S, I always have plan B, even have plan C. You are so on it, Sybil S. Technical difficulties, Karina G. Prepare possible solutions ahead of time. Exactly, so much to think about. Azzy, tech problems, keep cool. Easier said than done. When students have technical problems, of course. Let's go scroll down a bit. Tugba recommends standing up and shaking arms and legs twice during the lesson. I love that. Do you get your students to do it, or is it just you? Gamification, great. Making games, yeah. Connectivity issues are difficult. Games are difficult online. Scolding, Svetlana, scolding students all the time is very stressful, exactly. Bad connection, silent students, Mesa S, silent students. I've had so much experience of that over the past few weeks. It drives me nuts. Students switch off their camera and you don't know if they're still there. I have colleagues who are working abroad who have that exactly that situation. They're just talking to a screen and they don't know if anyone's listening. The students have muted her. Yeah, very, very different situation to what we were expecting when we became teachers, isn't it? And the students get stressed because they can't access things. Khalid Ibrahim Moham, thank you for that. Motivation is really hard. Thank you, Greta S. Marzina M, parents who do students' homework. How do you deal with that? It'd be interesting to know. Okay, so we've got mainly technical issues, motivation issues are the big thing. So let's do the poll now. Okay, just 3 options here. Please tell us which option of stress-inducing situation most resonates with your teaching experience. 1, 2, or 3. Let's have a look at the poll, see how we're getting on. Polly poll. And lovely. Here we go. All right, so we've got soaring ahead as the most popular cause of stress is your lesson relies on technology that is not working. Now, we all knew this even before we had to start going online. Teachers have always had a bad relationship with technology in the classroom, probably because we're being judged by all the students at the same time as we're trying to make things work. But now we absolutely have to. We've got no choice. Personality clash and different students falls way behind. So yeah, technology is the big stress these days. Thank you for that poll. I'm going to close the poll now. Minimize that. And close the chat. Bear with me while I just make some space to move. Super. Okay, next. Let's have a look at some psychological perspectives. So on this slide, we can see the pyramid diagram is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, listing the things that people need to progress. for success or general life. At the bottom, the first thing is basic physiological needs. We need air, we need water, we need food, we need clothes, we need to be in the right temperature, things like that. After that, we need to feel safe and we need to feel comfortable. We also need to feel like we belong and that we are loved. If we have these things, we can build some sense of self-worth and self-esteem. And then at the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. Now, Maslow talks of self-actualization as the highest level of psychological development, where the actualization of full personal potential is achieved, which occurs usually after the basic bodily and ego needs have been fulfilled. So your basic bodily and ego needs are in question when we're talking about blended classrooms and when we're talking about online learning as well. There's not a lot of control we have over those elements of things, which makes it very difficult to succeed. So let's have a look at this quote. Teachers need to provide a secure environment which fosters a sense of belonging, where individuality is respected, where self-esteem can develop, and where learners are constantly challenged to fulfill their potential. So in the chat box, how does this quote resonate with your current teaching situation? Do they go hand in hand, or is there a clash? Do you feel that you're not able to provide these things for your students? I'm going to have a look in the chat box and see what you have to say. I think I've got to grips with the chat box now. I can slow it down and read it properly. Okay. So true. Yes, we do try to do it. It does sound perfect, doesn't it? Very hard to control your environment when you're having a blended classroom or online. Okay, let's slow this down and read some other things you have to say. Yes, Bella Z, it can be a problem with adult learners because they're so developed already. Bonnie says it's difficult in a big high school class, and with COVID rules, it's difficult to provide these needs to your students. I get that. Lynn H says she has adult students, but she thinks her classroom does reflect these characteristics. That's lovely to hear, Lynn H. Thank you. Elena N, like the rest of us, doing my best. I'm sure you're doing brilliantly. Hira K, motivation is difficult in a blended class. Yeah, there's only one of us, you know. Camilla K, it's possible because I've known the students for a few years now. Well, that's wonderful. So you've built a rapport, you've built that trusting environment. So even if you are online, you've still got this relationship going. That's lovely. Juliet D, I think it's possible in a small online class. Wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. Madara P, true, but not always possible, no matter how much you try. I get that. I do get that. Difficult to do, Cecilia D. Maria M, I agree with the quote. It's essential to a learning environment. Yeah, absolutely. Eva P, hard to provide secure environment when they're behind their screens. Yeah, absolutely. We're so out of control when we've got kids online or adults or whatever. So let's see, specifically in a social distanced classroom, because that's really what this is supposed to be all about, how we can make it a little bit easier for ourselves. Okay, so I can close the chat, I think. Go back to the slides. Groovy. Thank you so much for your feedback. It's really, really helpful. All right, so our next psychological perspective here is holistic output, a holistic approach. So we're talking about systems thinking, complexity theories. So everything is important. Before you read the quote, The second theory that we're going to explore is that of systems thinking and complexity perspectives, which can also be called a holistic approach. So this overlaps very much with the humanism approach that we were looking at on the last slide. And it's expressed in this quote by Zoltan Dornier, I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, in his article, Learner Characteristics and Learning Environment. I'm not going to read this quote to you. I'll just give you a few minutes to read it because it's quite long for yourself, and then write any thoughts relating to it in the chat box. So I'm going to be quiet for a few minutes now. I'm just going to look at the chat box and see what you have to think. Say. I think he is Hungarian. Okay, Isabel, what does she mean with holistic? So holistic means thinking of various elements of human needs in order to succeed at something or to get better at something. So for example, if you're talking about a holistic approach to health, you wouldn't just get a prescription for medication. You'd also look at your diet, your well-being, how happy you are, your environment. So it takes in all the different elements to get the best result. And this is a holistic approach to teaching and learning. Okay. Yeah, everything is true. We're forced to work from our homes. Okay, let me slow this down because we've got some really interesting responses to this. This is the whole learner approach. Rafat G, thank you. Caring for the learner in all respects. Yeah. Marzina M, thinking about a person as a whole. Great, thank you, thank you. Karina S, at the moment the instructional context is higher, yes, which is a motivational problem for most students. Totally understand that. Without this interaction within the physical realm of the classroom, it's very, very difficult to nurture those relationships. Yeah, of course, Cynthia D, of course they are interdependent. Students need knowledge, but also need relationships. Beautiful, beautiful. Ruby B, instructional context goes hand in hand with social context. Yeah. Yeah. Katarzyna, sorry, I hope that's right. W, seems that one dimension is now missing in online teaching. Too right. Very, very tricky. Very difficult to achieve, says Josephina F. Thank you. Yep, it is. Shona M, interesting question. Is the online classroom the main social arena for students now? Well, I can only answer from my experience of classes that have been purely online. And I have to say there's a massive difference, a huge lack of interaction and building relations between the students compared to my experience of when we've all been in the classroom together, just because they're not physically in the same room. But I don't know, maybe they're all having an online party that I don't know about. Okay, Julio Cesar D. What I have noticed is this: the first one has been improved. Okay, so the presentation, curriculum, etc., despite all the difficulties involved. The second one, which is more about the relationships and the feelings, I have the feeling that that has been partially lost. Yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it? You're welcome for the explanation. All right, so many really, really insightful comments here. Really great. But we need to move on now. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on and get into the practical help that hopefully I'll be able to give you. Okie dokie. So practically, the first piece of advice that I noticed when we went back into schools after the first lockdown and everybody had to be 2 meters apart and wearing masks, etc., hand gel, temperature checks, all of that malarkey. And one thing that I noticed that really affected us as teachers was not being clear on the school's policy. Now, it depends on your teaching situation, but some teachers may not, if they're working for a school, if it's a private school or whatever your contract situation is, plus everybody's really stressed, you may not want to make a fuss with management. Perhaps you're worrying about keeping in favor to keep getting work. But actually, if you do ask management what the policies are and get it clear, it does show professionalism and responsibility. Most importantly, it will instill confidence in your students if you know the answers to their questions and the consequences for their actions, and if you can communicate these from the start. I'll just give you a little story, a little example of something that happened. So it was an adult international language school in the UK last summer. The COVID rules put restrictions on the distance that people could travel and how many people they could mix with. So the school policy adopted those rules. However, there was a confusion in the classroom which caused a general feeling of unease because some students had gone on a trip to London, which was organised by the school, but some other students just took a trip to London in the same week, but not arranged by the school. Now, these students were made to quarantine for 2 weeks, so could only come back to class via Zoom after their trip to London. The result was that all the students felt it was unfair and a pointless exclusion from the classroom. So the point here is that the teacher was not aware of this policy before this happened, and therefore felt lacking in any sense of authority, which affected his relationship with the class and the students' faith in the school's decision making. Had he known the consequences, he could have warned them and had greater control over the resulting situation. So, get to grips with the school policy. Make sure you know what the students need to know before they make certain decisions. So now we're specifically talking about going back into the classroom, but it has to be socially distanced. We're also talking about adults. So we're going to move on next to practical guidance and our perceived problems. But before I change the slide, again in the chat box. So tasks and activities and practices that you use in the classroom that have been developed, that are modern, that are holistic and humanist. What kind of things that you rely on, what tasks and practices that you rely on in your classroom to build these relationships and get this learning working well? What do you think that you can't do in a socially distanced classroom? So what practices in a socially distanced classroom do you think you cannot do now? So I'm going to monitor the chat box and see what are our limitations in a socially distanced classroom. Yes, I know, Isabella. I did feel sorry for the teacher too. Things are changing so quickly. It's so hard to keep on top of everything. Okay, so Yuri L, you can't feel the reactions of the students. Sylvia S, you can't work in groups. Gillian, you can't sing. Cremena R, hugs. Oh, really miss hugs. Goranka, you can't be spontaneous. Yeah, Corinne, story cubes for the whole class. I don't know what they are, but they sound great. Anna Paula F, touch activities. Yeah, all of these things which are so helpful these days in our teaching practices. Jill C, monitoring and support in the way that you used to by getting up close. Absolutely, we're so far away. What can we do? Claudia C, card games. Yeah. Imre K, sharing some non-sensitive photos and asking to talk about them with each other. Yeah, passing photos around. Yes, Isabel C, Kahoot and other platforms have been working very well online. I've been making quite a lot of use of that. Pair work, group work, give them a hug, pair work, outside activities, partner exercises. So many people answering now. Just to let you know that there's still a lot of slides. Oh yeah, I better hurry on. Told to hurry up. But yes, you're absolutely right. All of that stuff feel like limitations. So let's look now then at what we can do about that. Okay, so we think there are loads of limitations. So those things, close work, pair work, group work, blah, 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 blah. We need to consider, are there pedagogical benefits to these practices? Is it worth adapting them for a socially distanced classroom? Can we adapt them effectively? And if we can, how? So let's go through a list of my 6 favorite practices that I rely on in the classroom and see if we can still do them in the distanced classroom. So the first one, lots of you mentioned, things where students get close to each other. So 1, mingles, find someone who, class surveys. These are the things where all the students stand up, walk around the classroom, talk to each other. What are the benefits of this kind of practice? It's natural speaking practice. Students get to know each other. It encourages self-expression and it is energizing in the classroom. So yes, it's worth adapting. Can we adapt it? Well, here's my idea. It's concentric circles of chairs with the inner chairs facing out and the outer chairs facing in. They're all spaced at least 2 meters apart, and you control when the outside students move around to change who they're asking questions to. Now, the hybrid rating means that if you've got students online at the same time, so this gets 3 stars because for hybrid, you could set up students to use their phones to connect with online students via any platform at all. So if there is extra students who are online, just get them to talk to each other on the phone and they can get their information that way. All right, the next practical tip. Close work. Many of you mentioned the students getting close to each other, working together. So this is the quiet, collaborative tasks that students have to do with each other. Workbook exercises, quizzes, close pair checks of answers, anything where students have to whisper thoughts and ideas. So what are the benefits of these practices? Well, in the socio-cultural perspective of learning, it's very good for peer support, scaffolding, problem solving. So yes, it's worth adapting. Can we adapt it effectively? Possibly. So if there's space available outside the classroom for pairs to talk in private at a distance. If you have hybrid lessons, it's no problem because you have breakout rooms with online students. Next one is monitoring. Many of you mentioned monitoring. Okay, what are the benefits of monitoring, close monitoring? So you need to check that the students are on point with the task. You get really good one-to-one student-teacher time, which is very valuable, and you're showing genuine interest. So yes, it's worth adapting, but can we adapt it effectively? Possibly. So one idea is regular, open to the class, regular instruction checking, regular progress checking intervals. Okay, just have to keep checking more. One-to-one obviously is no problem with online students. You could also use instant messaging on your phones in class for privacy, or even speak over the phone. So just get all that tech in there. All these years we've been saying no phones in the classroom. Bring your phones in the classroom. Okay, right. Reading students, writing work with students. Okay, so being close with them while they're doing a writing task, and talking to them about their writing in close proximity. So what are the benefits? Lots of one-to-one student-teacher time. They feel they're getting lots of attention. It's very, very helpful. It's a very effective and fast way to address writing issues. So yes, we need to adapt it, and yes, we can. So if you have the technology, just get everything done digitally. One-to-one online in the classroom if you have the technology. If not, just ration the writing tasks, limit the writing tasks, because you're going to be overwhelmed with marking if you can't do it one-to-one with them. And also limit your marking to specific points, specific language points, so you're not doing everything at the same time. Obviously, hybrid rating is 3 stars because online is not a problem. All right then. Changing partners. So here we've got a diagram of the table set up in a room. Now each of these blue tables would usually have 2 students on them. So with the 2-meter rules, we've got 1 student per table. And this is how they can change partners more in the room. So what are the benefits of changing partners? Peer support, social variety, and positive group dynamics, all good stuff. So yes, it's worth adapting, and yes, we can, by arranging in a long, thin horseshoe. Then students have up to 3 different people to work with throughout the class without even moving. They can talk each side, and they can talk to the student opposite as well. Hybrid rating, obviously 3, because online is not a problem. Okay, now, lots of people's favorite things. I saw in the chat box you talked about, activities where people touch each other, move around, physical activities, energizing stuff, fun, really important. So I'm going to try to demonstrate 2 ideas to you. It's going to be really difficult like this, but I'll do my best. So I'm going to talk about sentence relay and running dictation. Benefits of this practice: they are energizing. It builds positive associations with learning. It's very social, lots of peer support, and it utilizes multiple intelligences. So it's really great stuff. We know that. Yes, it's worth adapting, and yes, we can do it effectively. Now, you may or may not be familiar with these 2 activities, but you get to keep all these slides and the chat, so you can try them out for the first time. Okay, sentence relay. Now, on your screen, you can see you've got 3 groups of students. The students are the stars. You've got the blue group, the red group, and the yellow group. This is used for pronunciation practice. So they're all standing in lines, in teams. All student number 1s will read and memorize the same text. For example, she sells seashells. Now, usually in a normal classroom, they would walk to the next student and whisper it in their ear. And this would continue along the line, and the last student would say what they've heard to the teacher. If they're correct, they win the round. If not, they have to start again, and everyone continues until a team successfully gets the right sentence from student 4. So it's actually very easy to adapt. You can still have them standing in their lines, make sure they're 2 meters apart, but instead of moving and whispering, they speak on their phones. Ta-da! Okay, and the last one. I've been talking for such a long time. Okay, running dictation. Again, the blue boxes are the tables. The stars are the students. A running dictation is used for reading and writing, but also speaking and listening practice. In pairs, One student writes at a desk. This is the red stars. The other dictates the texts that are placed around the room. These are the purple star students, and the texts are the yellow boxes. Usually, the reader, the purple star, will run to the writer, the red star, to dictate what they have read, and then they would swap places, and the winners complete the entire text first. So we can't do running around, we can't do whispering. My idea for an adaptation would be that the readers, the purple stars, memorize the first text and they don't move. Then the teacher tells them when all purple stars move to the next text, and only then can the reader shout to the writer. The readers will all be reading different texts at the same time, so it's not possible to cheat and just listen to a different student. This way, when all the texts are written, the writer then has to put them in order because they're all mixed up in the wrong order. You've arranged it like that. And the winners complete the task first. If you have online students, pair them with an in-class student. The online student will be the writer. And yeah, then there's no problem. So there's some practical tips for activities in the social distanced classroom. Okay, running out of time. Some technology tips. Now, it's been a year now. You probably know all this already, but it's good to remember. Try to minimize the amount of devices you need for your classes. Stick to one teaching platform if possible. Minimize worksheets in a hybrid classroom, because every worksheet you give to the student, you have to then email a copy to the online student. So it's just loads more work and things to do. Do spend some time practicing with your technology, navigate new technology, test run it with yourself or with friends, have a game of Kahoot, try out your games that you've made up yourself with your friends. I think possibly the most important is to ask for help. What goes around comes around. Not everybody knows everything. We need to share. We really need to share our knowledge and move forward together. For hybrid classes, it helps me to have a clear distinction between my board work and my tasks. Okay, I like to keep it in two separate parts. So my presentation time is completely separate. If you have to write on the board and deal with tech at the same time, you're going to stress out. Now, the bonus for students in this situation is that because you've got so much more else to do, they've got more thinking and talking time, because things will take a little longer to organize as you transition between students, technology, tasks, etc. And this, I think, is the most important thing, is look after yourself. Put yourself first. Don't plan too much. We can be so worried about these new ways of teaching that we could spend a whole day preparing for a lesson and then none of it works. So be very, very strict with your planning time, and stick to it. Communicate with your peers. We've covered that. You are not alone. We've got thousands here talking about the same thing. Do look after your health. I know it's a general no-brainer, but it's so easy to put it last when you're overwhelmed with your livelihood and your career and your passion, which is your teaching. Yeah, work-life balance. Keep it healthy. Don't let the intensity of what's happening take over your world. Prioritize your personal enjoyment. Because if you're not happy, no one's happy. All right, I think we're wrapping up now. It went quite well. So, summary. I hope this has helped you to know how to teach satisfying lessons in a socially distanced classroom. Got some practical instructions for maintaining your developed practices. I hope you feel that your teaching situations are considered and that you can work productively with minimum stress in a socially distanced setting. Do take time to prepare, practice, familiarize yourself, and familiarize the students with these adapted practices. The students are usually so understanding. I'm really grateful that you have shared lots of strategies, ideas, and thoughts within this session. I really hope it's built some confidence within the global ELT teaching community. Thank you for your misspelt valuable input. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we're going to finish with a little quote that you can read in your own time.
Thank you very much, Kandy, indeed. Yes, the chat box is running now with hundreds, if not thousands, of thanks for your wonderful pieces of advice, and even for letting the space for comments from people. So now we still have some time. So if you could refer to the questions and pick up as many as you can answer within the next few minutes, it would be great. Okay?
Sure, absolutely. All right, so any questions? I'll try to answer. So Sumaya, I'm really sorry, but I don't have any experience of teaching young learners, but I'm sure other people who are listening to this do, and they can pop their tips into the chat, which you'll get a copy of. Okay, Sifat, during online classes, as a student, I often get distracted and have to struggle a lot to stick to my class. What can I do to give my full concentration? Well, I get distracted when I am in a student situation on Zoom, online classes, mainly because I can see myself and it makes me feel quite uncomfortable. So maybe you could just try like hiding your face with another program, or ask if you can turn your camera off. That might help. Apart from that, if you can't do that, maybe just sort of let the teacher know that you're focusing on writing notes instead of looking at the teacher on the screen. I think if you can keep your eyes away from the screen, that will help you to concentrate on what's being said, maybe. Simonette has a wonderful suggestion. Charades. Of course you can still do charades. Hooray for charades. What can we do to prevent students from cheating? Any ideas, anyone? I mean, not a lot as far as I'm aware, like online. I know that's not a very satisfactory answer, but I don't actually have one. Kindergarten, I'm afraid I don't have experience, but other people might. Andre, in cooperative learning, Barbara Gross Davis says, feedback in meetings or from progress reports should be included in the timeline for the project. What should this look like online? Emails or more free discussions, Feedback in meetings should be included in the timeline. Well, you could just use your chat if you're using Zoom or any other platform, and these chats are always recorded. That might be helpful. Also, you can just record the entire lesson. Okay, I've read that one. Oh, SNI, how to avoid teacher burnout with the workload during online teaching. Yeah, I would definitely refer to the well-being tips in the slides. You really need to prioritize yourself first. Don't get overwhelmed. Be strict with yourself. It's not the end of the world if the lesson doesn't go as you wanted it to. We're all just doing our best. Give yourself a break. Okay. Maria G, absolutely. Do you think that a flipped classroom may help? I have been using flipped classroom more and more during this time of purely online teaching. Basically, you spend the time preparing before the lesson, you know where to send them online, you know what tasks to ask them to achieve, and then they come in, you give them the instructions, you make sure they know the instructions, and for the majority of the lesson, they are not in the online classroom. They are out doing the tasks, doing the research, and then you get the feedback, you get the results either at the end of that lesson or the next lesson, whatever you choose. So yeah, I really think flipped classroom is very helpful for online learning, definitely. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I'm able to answer effectively. Just scroll up, see if there's any more. Yeah, I think we're ready to wrap it up, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Kandy. Indeed, thank you very much for your wonderful questions and comments in the chat box, everybody. It was really great to see you, Kandy, and to have you in the presentation. I hope you liked it and enjoyed it as much as I did. But I could see in the comments that yeah, there was a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of good pieces of advice, and I think this is one of the most valuable elements of those conferences, that we actually can share our experience, things that we know, because nobody is an expert at the moment in terms of teaching this online, and we learn from each other. So
Yeah.
thank you very much, Kandy, once again. Thank you all for your attendance. And just one more comment, that if you want to read more about teaching online and managing online learning, you can use our focus papers, which are available for you on our website. So it's enough to Google expert Oxford University Press or expert panel, and then you'll be able to download and use pieces of advice that we prepared for you. And so, what can I say? That is the end of ELTOC Day 2, Block 3. So thank you very much once again on my own behalf, on behalf of Oxford University Press and the whole team of moderators and speakers who were with you today, and see you tomorrow and see you in our future presentations. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye.
So just to note, folks, we're going to close the room in a minute, and you'll be outside of the room for the